Have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions, subtractions, or changes? If not, a motion is in order to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Peridot.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hicks. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is approval of minutes for the October 18, 2016 regular meeting, October 25th, 2016 special meeting, and November 1st, 2016 special meeting. Does anyone have any changes or edits to those minutes? I'd like to make one request, Ms. Nance. Can you put Ms. Candida Murphy's name in the minutes? I'd like to recognize her officially from the board.
Okay.
We have an individual, and I want to say who that individual is, if that's okay with everybody. Any other changes? I think that's quite an accomplishment. I feel strongly that the board should recognize her permanently, because those will be on file for many, many years. So, okay. If no other changes, a motion is in order to approve minutes for the October 18, 2016 regular meeting as amended, the October 25th, 2016 meeting as presented, and the November 1st, 2016 meeting as presented.
I'll make that motion as stated.
Motion by Mr. Peridot.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is student and staff recognition. Mr. Christie.
We don't have any student or staff this evening.
Okay. All right. Public comments?
We will have several staff members, I think, at the next one.
Okay.
Got some things to do. No
Okay.
students and staff.
No public comments. Okay. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Got a few things to mention, go through here quickly. We've already begun our alternate assessment testing goes through December. Access testing begins in January. Right now we have science teachers that are attending a conference in Columbus, and this same group of science teachers in December will be joining a team of administrators, and those teachers will be attending the KEDC co-op science training, where they will be looking at the new science assessment system, and they'll be trained on that, and they'll come back and train the other teachers in the district on what that new science assessment looks like. Along that same line, I also mention I got a call today, and I've been asked by KDE to join the Office of Assessment and Accountability to be one of 25 people in the state to look at the field test new science questions for bias and for all the students across the state, and that'll take place on December 7th and 8th. I'll be going to Frankfurt to meet with them on that, and that's to look at the questions that will be used come out on this next test in 17.
Okay.
We're continuing all of our walkthroughs throughout the district, as we have been. The Superintendent's Veterans Day Art Contest, we don't have those with us tonight. Those were at all the schools for the Veterans Day programs. They're now being judged, and then once we get the winners of all those categories, they'll come to the board office, and then we'll be recognizing those students, and that will be probably at the December meeting. We had our first community event at GRC. We had over 50 folks in attendance, where we had a program where we brought in a state trooper who talked with parents and students and staff about drugs and use of drugs, and kind of looked at how they're being used in this current times. It was an excellent program. Then we also had a second program that we backed that up with another officer from Nicholas County, or from Nicholasville Police Department, and he talked to parents and students about social media and appropriate use of social media and some of the outcomes that could come about with misuse or inappropriate use of social media. That was a real good program. We provided daycare, child care for some of the kids, families who had younger kids that weren't involved in the program, and we had some community organizations that donated the food, and some of the high school students stayed with in the ag department. They cooked the hot dogs, and I think everybody that was there had a good time and enjoyed it and learned a lot. Leadership Winchester is tomorrow, and it's going to be at the high school. We'll have several of our staff along with some other community folks that will be speaking at that. It's going to be at GRC up in the flex room on the second. And BCTC, yeah, GRC.
On Thursday.
It's on Thursday. Tomorrow's not Thursday. It is. It's Thursday. I'm sorry. It's Thursday. Tomorrow.
It may be Thursday by the time we leave.
Yeah, maybe. It's Thursday. I'm sorry.
Could be.
The schools are all participating in the Val Ed survey. You know that's that's part of the principal's professional growth. It's in the alternate years, off years from the TEL survey that we do, and they'll be doing the TEL survey then this coming spring. Bridget Mann is taking part of an early learning accreditation review in another district, and I'm not even sure which district she's in, but she's there. It's going to be a 2-day thing. We encourage anytime any of our administrators get an opportunity to participate in those. Those are tremendous learning tools for us as we go to other districts to help perform these things. We learn a lot of the things that are working in other districts, and we're able to see things that do and don't work. So we always encourage our administrators to take part in those. We've begun the recognition of our students across the district that have scored proficient and distinguished on the K-Prep, and that's at all schools. I've got a pass here, I'll show you, but we're doing this kind of a similar thing to what we did last year. All the students who scored proficient or distinguished, they're given a pass, and it's good to get in any of the athletic events, well, certain athletic events, anytime throughout the year of their choosing. They get a free pass to those athletic events, and that's one way of recognizing those students there. Of course, they've had all of their celebrations. I think most of the schools have completed the celebrations from the K-Prep, and everybody's back hard at work again now, working on next year already. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that's all I have right now.
Okay. All right, next up under student learning and instructional services, item number 4, third month attendance update. Mr. Holland.
Take a look at month 3 attendance. Kudos goes to Strode Station, 95.29 to lead the way. I think you had, Dr. Kudek had predicted month 3 would be a little bit down.
I think it's pretty good considering the number of kids we've seen in the office.
Yeah,
We're really busy.
there were a lot of nurse sent homes and a lot of illness that hit us a little bit earlier in month 3. So actually was a little bit surprised that it was as high as it was for the year, 94.85%. There's our month-to-month, year-to-year comparison from last year to this year.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Holland? I'd say we're pretty close to where we were last year, but like I said, consider a level of illness in the community. I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
No flu yet, so.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up under student learning and instructional services, item number 5, breakdown of MAP data, Ms. Considine.
Good evening. I'm back before you to show the percentages of apprentice, proficient, and distinguished for MAP, because when I shared the information with you in October, it was just novice reduction. When we come back in the spring, I'll have both charts.
Okay.
But I do want to keep them separated because I'm tracking that for novice reduction goals with our CDIP, and it's just easier instead of
Okay.
putting it in there.
Okay. I was wondering where I was there,
Yeah.
so.
I think, because we have attachments, and if I put it in there, it doesn't stand out as much. I'm wanting to see the novice reduction go down, but of course, we always want proficient distinguished to go up, so I
Right.
really want to track it that way.
Okay.
Any questions?
Can you hit high points and low points, and how this reflects on planning for the next several months?
Okay. What we'll probably look at as we're working on the CDIP is analyzing the information that we received from our preliminary universal screener to determine what those needs would be. I still feel like that we're still showing a fairly high novice and apprentice in reading. If you look at last month's when we had the novice, we're starting to see the math program with lower numbers in novice. And so we want those to continue to go down. If you look at third grade apprentice, it was 8.2. And third grade novice was 10.7. So if you think about that, then those are pretty low numbers. So I think our math program is working. What we need to really focus on is to have those numbers decrease at apprentice, and we want our proficient and distinguished to increase. So we're going to look at, we're applying for the Read to Achieve grants, and we will be working on that. Those will be due in January, and I think that that would be very beneficial for us with our new reading program, because it truly focuses, and it's for primary, it focuses on reading interventions. So, and keep your fingers crossed that we receive some math grants. We should know
When will
in
we know?
December. So, and we applied for 4, and I think we're applying for 4 Read to Achieve. Yes.
And I think that those are annually.
Okay. All right. Other questions from Wisconsin? All right, thank you. All right, next up is item number 6, and that's consider approval of an amount of a one-time transitional salary add-on for full-time certified and classified employees for 2016-2017. Ms. Ellis. I'll preface your comments by saying I asked to add this to the agenda because I've gotten some feedback from staff saying that there might be some concern. We've given some fairly significant holiday bonuses over a 3-year period. You know, a transition from that to an increased salary schedule, which is what we wanted to do, but it might be a bit of an important transition for employees. So
Right.
I brought this back for everybody today to discuss.
So due to that request, what I have just passed around to you all, if you will remember back when we were talking working budget, you asked me to give you an amount that was available for raises. And what was already built into the salaries at that point was approximately $964,000 that was already available in our reoccurring money. And then we brought back to the table when we talked about raises, the different percentages to choose from for certified and classified, and we ended up going with the 3% and 4%, which everyone greatly appreciates. And had it been for the entire school year, it would have been around $894,000. Being that it was effective October 29th, which will be reflected on the November 30th paychecks coming up, that's going to use $616,000 of that amount. So I've laid out 3 scenarios just based on the money budget-wise that is available, and being that we only use $616,000, that's approximately $277,000 that would still be available had we done the entire year raises. And so the first scenario you see there, which would be, and this is based on our full-time and part-time count employees, if we gave the certified staff a $400 bonus and the classified staff a $300, that's going to add up to about $270,000. The second scenario.
Why the difference?
I'm sorry.
Why the different amounts?
That is just because the raises were the difference of the percentages. That's the proposal that we brought. You all can decide on any amounts, do an equal amount. That is up to you. This is just my proposals, trying to keep the money within the different budget scenarios that I've got laid out for you tonight, and doing a straight amount for them was above and below the dollar amounts I was trying to stay in for budget. So this is where it has fallen. Just proposals. Again, you can choose whatever scenario you like or make up your own scenario. So back to the first scenario is if you stayed in the amount that had we retroed the $277 that is available in the budget currently, this would stay $270,000. That second scenario of a $500 for certified, a $400 for classified, brings us up to $347,000, and that stays within the amount that I originally told you was available for raises when we started talking percentages. There was, from what we used, there's $348,000 still available of last year's reoccurring before we get to the new money. And then the third scenario is a little bit higher, 600 for certified, 500 for classified, which brings you into a total of almost 424,000. And that's about a $76,000 increase into the new 4% revenue over the reoccurring revenue that was carried forward. Are there any specific questions or?
When
Tia,
we,
go ahead.
oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Judy.
When we began this add-on process 5 years ago, the intent at that time was to provide a supplement because the state did not give a raise that year. In subsequent years, we have continued to provide that supplement whether or not the state gave a raise. Last year, I believe 4 board members sitting at this table will recall the discussion that we had that the 2015-16 add-on bonus, transitional, whatever we're calling it, Christmas Club, whatever, that would be the last time we would do it. And now here we are again. And we all, at that time last year, all 4 current board members voiced support for having any increments in salary to be reflected in our salary schedule structure so that it reflects competitively, if you will. You know, none of these $900 bonuses over the past 4 years has shown up in our salary schedule. And this, whatever amount, will not show in our salary schedule structure. That does not meet our goal of getting our salaries competitive with other districts. You know, I believe that folks have had a year to prepare for the transition because we really emphasized that last year, that this would be the last year. And now we're back to it. So if this is transitional year 1, will next year be transitional year 2, and the next year transitional year 3, and it never end? And meanwhile, our salaries do not get reflected accurately in our salary schedule. And I strongly believe that the 3% and 4% raises that we have already voted on, I believe that helps us to be more competitive and to help reach our goal of getting our salary structure to reflect what we want it to reflect and to be more competitive. And we do not get there if we continue to provide the add-on or the bonus or the transitional raise or whatever we're going to call it, and if it's not reflected in our salary schedule. I would like to see us to be able to accomplish the goal of an effective, forward-moving salary schedule that reflects the appropriate raises. That's my opinion.
Question, could we put this money forward towards pay increase for next year? There's no reason we can't do that, right?
Correct. That would be part of our carryover for next year.
Because I think the intent of this for this of 3% and 4% is what we could afford right now, but we want to continue to move forward with that. That's our budget allows. Correct?
At the risk of sounding like Scrooge also, I was at the discussion, I'm one of the 4 board members that Ms. Hicks talked about. And I think what bothers me about this more than anything, and, we gave, over the past 2 years, this board has given a 5% raise. I'm not sure how many years it's been since this district has seen that. I'm not sure, probably since the 90s, I would think, that you've got that big of a raise over that time. And we just got through listening to our principals, and each one of them gave needs, and I look at elementaries, talk about technology, interventionist, STEM teachers, library needs, Baker, writing programs, library upgrades, performance arts, Robert D. Campbell, building upgrades, library upgrades, iPads and other technology upgrades, GRC, upgrade Wi-Fi, look at the one-to-one initiative. I just feel like that we have addressed those salary needs at this time. That's not to say, as Dr. Kudek said, that we cannot put this in our next year budget too to reflect on our salary schedules. But I would like for us to look at the money we have here, putting it toward those needs that we have in the classroom. That's my opinion of this.
Other discussion? T, I was going to call on you. You had some things to say about the salary bonuses and retroactive. Some of that overlaps with what we talked about last month.
Well, I think we talked probably a lot about it. I was able to find something. I hope that everybody received a PowerPoint that I sent to everyone. It has a sort of what I think you could use as a template for a motion if you did want to do this. Is it 100% not going to be viewed as something retroactive? I can't tell you that 100%. But Katie is putting out a PowerPoint that says how to do a motion for it, how to do a motion for kind of a bonus situation, which is kind of what it is, right?
Right.
So it's not the riskiest thing you could possibly do or anything like that. I think that we've discussed it, and so you probably have your own opinions at this point on how the law fits in there. I do suggest you look at that motion if you want to do it.
The way I look at it, I'll be honest with you, I don't think we took care of business early in the year, and we should have took care of business early in the year and had it at the beginning of the year. I don't know why we didn't do that. I can't speak to that. But I thought we should have took care of business, and I think we're cheating our staff and not giving them what they deserve and what they've worked for. Now, we can call it whatever we want. I don't care. But I've got the salary scales. I've had it for all over the state. And Clark County is way behind in the salary scales as far as being in the competitive like Judy's talking about. And there's some other districts that around us are way behind too. So I had KDE do all that for me and send it to me. So I've got all that if anybody ever wants to look at it. But we're probably in the bottom, we're probably close to the bottom 20%. So I'm just telling you, I think you're doing your faculty and staff. Of course, I'm a lame duck, so I'm going off the board anyway, so in January, December, but I'm just telling you, I think you're doing your faculty and your staff a disservice by not either making up the difference, however you want to call that. I know we can't call it that, but it is what it is. So that's the way I feel. I think you ought to do some type of bonus. Now, Judy's right. I think in the last year's board meeting, I think Ms. Griffin was the one that made the motion, and she was the one that said that this would be the last time. Well, if that was the case, then why we even got it on the agenda? Because all you're doing is bringing it up for people to fight over. So that's my thoughts and that's my opinion.
And I would like to see this money be put into a salary increase for next year. And we can start working on that after the first. We'll have a little bit better idea. Maybe after our first budget comes out in January, we'll have a little bit better idea on revenues.
I would petition the board that if we are discussing salaries for next year, that we please do that ahead of time and make sure it is effective July 1 for
Yes.
the new schedule.
What would fit your timeframe? Make sure it shows up on the agenda.
It will be, if you tell me a percentage you would like to consider, I will make sure that's in the draft budget for January that's presented.
Okay, let's do that then.
So if you could give me a percentage of what you would like the salary scales to be increased for the next 2017-18 school year, I will make sure that's budgeted.
I think the goal of this board would be to have the salary schedules match counties around us.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't think we'll ever match Fayette's. There's no income tax, but.
No, you're not
if
going
we
to match
If
Fayette.
we match
Because their
our,
tax base is tremendously bigger than yours.
right, but if we match our comparison counties, Dr. Bob has, usually gives us the population
counties.
report.
10
You know, Franklin's on that, Montgomery's on that. I
And
can't remember the other
Shelby
one.
has been on it. It's all.
He's got it figured out which are our sister districts in terms of size and revenue base in the city and county and all that. So I think if we, my goal would be to get us salary-wise with those districts.
So regardless of what the percentage would be to coincide with our surrounding counties,
That would be the
that's what you
goal. I
wanna
don't
see
know if
on
we
the
can make
draft.
that
I wouldn't
one
say
budget
surrounding
cycle or
county.
two.
I would say
well,
your
the
comparable
comparable
counties.
counties. I'm sorry, wrong word, but.
And you can do surrounding counties too, I think that's an idea, because you've got
Well, you
a
don't
teacher
want-
here, you can lose them to Powell or Estill or someplace else, so that's not very far away.
Dr. Kudak, just the question, something that you said about moving this money to use towards next year's salary. This is one-time money. I'm not
Right.
understanding what you're
No,
reading,
this,
how that would go.
this is not one-time money. This is reoccurring
So
dollars
this
that
is
we're talking.
okay, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
Okay, I didn't
Yes, sir.
understand. what
This is based on what was already in the salaries when I walked in the door, what was sitting in the salary buckets, and we discussed that they were over budgeted at that time and what would be available for a raise.
And is that part of the one-time money that we passed, the 4% on tax stuff?
The 4% will be reoccurring money.
Yeah.
So,
Is that what's you're considering right there in that recurring money?
yes, all of these considerations right here would be with reoccurring dollars. This is not with
Yeah.
one-time money.
Okay.
That pot of money is still sitting there available to do what you choose to do with.
All right. Any other discussion? Any motions? All right. Next item is item number 7, consider approval of 2015-2016 financial audit report.
Tom Sparks is here with us from our audit, and he is going to walk through the audit with you all and discuss some major points.
Thank you, Alicia. Hopefully you have before you a blue bound document. That's the June 30, 2016 audit report for the Clark County School District. I want to thank the board for allowing our firm to do your audit this year. I want to thank Mr. Christie, Alicia, and their staffs assisting my staff as we were on campus and at all your various locations. For Alicia, this was the first time she went through a financial statement audit, and she was a little nervous. We weren't as scary as she thought. We didn't have horns and everything, but she did a good job getting through the first year audit, and I like her determination and rolling up her sleeves and getting into problems. There's always a lot of challenges going through a first audit. The first thing I want to draw to your attention is on page 2. On page 2 is our auditor's opinion. You can see that from the opinion, we issued an unqualified opinion, which is a clean statement. Means we did not find any evidences of fraud or misappropriation in any of the tests we performed on the district's financial items. The next part of the audit is what's called the MD&A. That's a management discussion and analysis. This is management's viewpoint of the highlights of the financial year. There's some information in there that is required. We check that information to see if it is in compliance with the audit. And then everything else, you can put in whatever you want to. Alicia and Mr. Christie did a good job in pulling information together. But there is a schedule I want to kind of look at because it's in a nice comparative form. If you'll turn to page 5 of the audit, you'll see down toward the bottom a net position schedule. It has 2016 and 2015 side by side. Your total assets increased about $4.5 million over the year. That's a good sign. That was primarily in capital assets. We had a lot of construction going on, and those were completed during the year. That deferred outflows number, that's related to this ugly pension, and which will continue to be on your financial statements as long as the current accounting standards, reporting standards require it. And it will probably always be going up, and we'll talk about a little bit about that later. Down under total liabilities, almost a wash this year. You did pay almost $3.5 million back in bond and capital lease payments, but the pension went up, so it almost washed out the effects on the financial statements. The deferred inflow, there again, this is a pension item that comes from the actuaries. It's done once a year. And then at the bottom of the page, you look at your total net position. The total net position went up about $7 million. That's a good sign for districts to look at on financial health. Your net position goes up, that's a good indicator.
Tom, did
yes.
net position used to be called something else?
It's been called many things over the years, but currently you've had fund balance, you've had net assets,
Okay.
but now it's net position. On page 6 is a side-by-side comparison 2016 to 2015 on your governmental funds, and then your business type, which is basically your food service, and then totals. I'm going to direct you over to the total line. If you look under total revenues, you had an increase of about $7 million over the prior year. If you look, this primarily comes from state revenue sources. Could have been grants, could have been SEEK, could have been various sources, but it came from state. Down in the expenditure line items, your expenses went up about $3 million. The biggest area there was instruction, went up the biggest amount. And then if you come on down through the financial statement, you have the total net change in position that we talked about, $7.2 million as compared to last year's $3.5. So again, a good sign that the district is growing in net position. We'll talk about the food service a little bit later. The next page I want to direct your attention to is on page 14. On page 14, just to look at how you did with some of your individual funds. You have here general funds, special revenue, which is your grant funds, construction, and non-major are the smaller funds, and there's a schedule on the back of the audit that has those detailed out. But if you look at your general fund had an increase of about $2.7 million this year. There again, that's a healthy increase. In the construction fund, it had a deficit of 4.4. Don't get alarmed. That's what construction funds are supposed to do. You get your bond monies in, then you spend it over time. So as you spend that money out, you're going to have deficit because you don't get new bonds each and every year. So as you can see, you spent that money for ongoing facilities projects, and then the overall effect of all of your net changes in fund balance was $1.3 million for the year. The next schedule I'd like to bring to your attention is on page 16. This is where you talked about budgets earlier. This is a comparative. This is with your general fund. You know, you go through your working budget, your tentative budget, and then you have your actual. And this is how you did. If you can look at the top of the page, and you've got a variance column on the far right, total revenues. Total revenues exceeded budget by $2 million. That's a good sign. Coming on down to expenditures. Of course, in the budgeted amount of expenditures is the contingency element. And then, of course, for actual, what we audit, we don't have a contingency per se because that falls out down in your net fund balance that you see at the bottom. But as you move it across, you can see that it was a favorable variance, about $12 million. So overall, budget to actual was about $14 million favorable variance, which is a good sign. If you come down to the bottom, you can see that the general fund overall ended up with $15 million in its fund balance. We talked earlier about the proprietary funds, which is basically your food service. If you turn to page 19, we can look at detail of how the food service did this year. On the revenue side of things with your food service, it was almost a break-even year. There's only about a $20,000 difference between last year and this year on the revenue side. On the expense side, if you look toward the bottom of the page, under change in net position, you can see there was a decrease of almost $319,000. Your food service did not lose $319,000. Unfortunately, this pension has to be reflected in your food service, and so the effect of it was almost $480,000 this year. So much of that decrease is because of the pension being reflected in these food service financial statements. The prior period adjustment that you see there is in the prior year, which was the first year of implementation of the GASB 68, which was the pension. In the allocation that was done in the prior year, it didn't really fairly, more of the liability got stuck over in the general funds. So this prior period adjustment reflected it more over into the proprietary fund as it should have been, because it was should be based on classified wages, which is where most of your food service workers are. Last year when it was done on a more of a certified and classified basis, which that was not really the best basis to allocate. So that's just getting it back in where it should be.
Do you foresee that becoming a recurrent issue, or is this just a one-time thing?
The prior period adjustment, one-time thing, because I think now that KDE is kind of going through here and kind of getting all this settled, once these changes, and Alicia can tell you, they're constantly sending out things with how to handle this, how it should be reflected, both at the munis level and then also, you know, for the audits. But I will tell you, this GASB 68 is not going away. It's going to be on your financial statements for a while. And unfortunately, there is new accounting standards coming down the road that's going to, if it goes through, that will put other retirement benefits on the books, like healthcare. It is currently underfunded. And you know, I don't know what the numbers are, but there again, these numbers are these underfunded employee benefits, like your pension, your healthcare. It's now starting to be passed down to the entity level. So it's coming. I don't know what the effect's going to be, but I will go into what the effects of the pension is here in a few minutes. Let's see. Then we jump into the notes to the financial statements. A few notes I want to draw to your attention. Page 35. This is the capital equipment note. As you can see under the additions, you had a lot of construction in progress items that were completed during the year. Once they're completed, they move down into buildings and improvement. So you had an overall increase there, about $21 million in your assets. And that was through construction and ongoing construction projects. On the page 37 and 38 is a snapshot of what the debt of the district is. On page 37, this is the existing bonds. As you can see, at June 30, 2016, you had a total of $68,000 in principal on the bonds. If you turn to the next page, you can see that's broken in two components. Clark County's share of this, and then the Kentucky's share of it. As you know, some of the bonds are participating bonds, and they help finance some of that. So about $5 million of the principal is provided by Kentucky, like through on behalf payments, and then the rest is due on the district. Down below there are capital leases. These are mainly capital leases for school buses, and you can see issues that have been outstanding. Almost $1 million is the balance as of June 30, 2016. At the bottom of the page is what your amortization schedule is going to look like over the next 5 years and thereafter. If you'll turn to page 44, and here's the scary part of reality. If you look toward the bottom of the page, Clark County only, their proportionate share of the unfunded pension liability for classified employees is $10,757,000. Clark County's KTRS, which is your certified employees, unfunded liability is $165 million. That's just your district. As you can see, as a district, it'd be $176 million. This is a huge problem. Everybody knows about it. State knows about it. What they're going to do about it, I don't know. But I think it's wise for boards to know that it's out there, so that when something happens and gets pressed down, that's why you want to have a pretty strong contingency, because if the state starts making you share in some of this liability, you need to have some resources there to have your part of it. I don't know that's going to happen, but this is a big problem that's going to have to be taken on. So just huge numbers. Huge numbers. On page 58, this is our recap of the school activity funds. One of the things that my staff does is when they're out in the schools, we check and make sure compliance with Red Book requirements. And we also check and make sure that none of the activity funds had deficit balances. As you know, KD has made several changes with activity funds, what can be paid at the school level, what has to be paid at the state level. And so there's not as much activity at the school level as there used to be, but you can look at the total under the receipts, almost $884,000 went through your schools. So it is something that is significant. And that's the breakout of it. The following page is just what goes through the high school and all the various funds that they have at year end. If you look on page 60 at the high school, at a balance of about $141,000 in deposits. We did testing for your, we have to do a single audit due to the amount of federal funds that went through the district. This year we did Title I. I'm glad to say that we did not have any non-compliance issues with the Title I program, which is good. So you got a clean bill of health on Title I. When we did our general government auditing standards compliance test, we did not have any findings there. We did have some management comments, and those are started on page 72, if you'll turn there with me. This year we had some board level and a school activity. And what management level comments are, these are just things when the auditor is out doing their procedures and tests. If something is out there that could elevate to a major problem, you put it in a management comment before it gets to that problem, so management can take care of it. One of the things we talked about is, and y'all kind of talked about single salary schedules and that kind of thing. You know, we are required now to look at the superintendent's contract. This may be overboard from our standpoint, but we know that the Auditor of Public Accounts is very sensitive to superintendent's contracts. So we just suggest you may look at maybe having that every time an increase is passed, that is spelled out in the contract of the superintendent, so that there'd be no question by Auditor of Public Accounts if they came in and did an examination. The next thing that happened when we were looking through cash accounts, we noticed that there was a cash account opened up in the school's name, but it did not belong to the school. I think, you know, some standards need to be put out there that says, you know, this is a no-no. You do not open up, whether they did not have the federal ID number, but they used the name of Clark County. So they should not do that when they open up an account.
And how do we, what's our method of controlling that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, you're real limited. I'll just be honest. All you can do is, what I would suggest is, one, if it's an employee, you've got to have some communication to the employees, put it in their handbook or whatever. You can't use the school's name. There's too much. Of course, when you get into the booster club issues, the board is limited, you know, on what your requirements are with booster clubs. But I think it is a good time when you have the training done for the Red Book that you invite the booster club officers in so they can kind of get a feel for what's required. I mean, I'm just throwing this out. It still doesn't, you can't control what a booster club does, but on your employee side, just reinforce that you can't open up an account using the name of the district. And you all have a policy. The next thing was, of the booster clubs that we did sample, looking at approved contracts. I know you all know about all this, but you just want to make sure you've got a database that you can go back to see when a booster club sought approval to be operating in the district. I know we've mentioned this at several of the boards that we've presented. You know, they said, well, I know it's somewhere back in the minutes. Well, somewhere back in the minutes may take a while to find. So you may want to have a more available database for those agreements so they can come up quickly. And that way you can see if somebody's operating when they shouldn't be operating, or vice versa. And then on page 73, and we find this in most districts with purchase orders. It's just a hard thing. There's so many purchase orders to go through, but there were some that were dated after the date. This is common. But there again, continue training, letting your various departments know you got to get approval before you spend money. Now, down on the school side of things, we did have some issue, or some things we want to point out at Campbell Junior High, fundraisers. When we were doing the fundraiser, some of those worksheets were not fully completed. Those need to be completed, all the sections. On page 74, this is an item that really needs to be addressed with timeliness of getting money to the school bookkeeper. You don't want that money staying in the classroom. Many things could happen, most will be bad. You know, if it's in a file cabinet, in a teacher's desk drawer, or in a pocketbook, whatever, you need to get that money on a timely basis down to the bookkeeper so it can get deposited in the bank. At Conkright, had a couple issues. There was an invoice that we couldn't find an invoice for a purchase order, and then there was a post-dated purchase order. There again, we find that a lot of the districts that we do those items. A snapshot on starting on page 75, from an auditor standpoint, when we go back and look at the findings we had in the prior year, and most of those have been resolved in the current year, that's a good sign that management has taken some positive steps to correct those items and not let go. You know, we did, you know, I think Conkright May had a reoccurring finding, no, it was Campbell had a recurring finding, but for the most part, you corrected everything that we found last year. So that's good. That's a good sign. Any questions? I know there's a lot of information here. Your audits were due to be submitted to Frankfurt by today. We've got everything submitted. Alicia got the electronic version submitted, which was an ordeal this year, but just because some changes Katie had made with Munis. But it's all gotten accepted and passed through. So you've met all your filing requirements as far as KDE is concerned.
Any questions, Mr. Sparks? All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll need to approve this, so motion is in order to consider approval of the 2015-2016 financial audit report as presented.
I move that we approve the audit financial report as presented.
Okay, motion by Ms. Hicks,
Second.
second by Mr. Parrott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, next up is item number 8, capital funds request. Thank you, Mr. Sparks.
Thank you.
On the agenda, there was a request to reimburse other repairs and maintenance in the amount of $313,702. And I emailed you all a list of what all of that included, and some questions were asked and clarified. Are there any other questions regarding this capital funds?
I think the explanation was very helpful, and I would ask you that if we have any capital funds requests in the future, that, you know, there's only, all right, that you can't really specify a lot on the KDE
Right.
form, but the supplemental material is very helpful, so. Okay, any other questions from Ms. Ellis or discussion? All right, not a motion is in order to consider a capital funds request for repairs and maintenance as presented. The total is $313,702.
I'll make that.
Motion by Mr. Wilson,
Second.
second by Mr. Parrott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next up is item number 9, consider approval for carpet replacement for Stroke Station Elementary Library and Central Office. Mr. Nichols.
Good evening. As it states, I'm asking the board to consider approval for 2 locations. One, the library at Stroke Station. That was water damaged some time ago. I would like to add that we have, in the past, as early as July, we have replaced 9 classrooms of carpet over there and at Shear. We did also that in December of last year and the summer before. And our plan, our maintenance plan is to continue to replace those classrooms of carpet with tile in the near future, as early as this December if possible.
How many classrooms do we still have that have carpet?
The principals may want to help me out with this, but I think there's 20-some at Shear. And maybe 12 or 15 at Stroke Station.
this year has more, there was new carpet put in there at one time. So some of that is newer carpet too, since we have since gone to tile in all the rooms.
And we've paid for those rooms out of our maintenance budget, and we're asking this carpet be replaced out of general fund. We're also asking that central office, and if you look at the last diagram in your packet, it will show a color diagram of the different areas in central office, the yellow being the worst area. The red area is what you're sitting in now, or the portion of what you're sitting in now. And then the blue area would be the auditorium to the left side of the entrance. And you can see the prices for those different areas as well. So you could either do all or any portion of that you deem necessary.
So that it would be carpet here in this building,
It would be
not tile.
It would be carpet tile. They're 24
Okay.
by 24 inch.
Like what's in the
Carpet
high
tile.
school.
Squares, yeah.
And what is advantage to the maintenance department is being able to replace pieces or sections, or being able to stop and replace certain areas. So it would be beneficial to our maintenance department as well.
So what's the cost?
Total cost, I think is, I'm sorry, I should have had that in front of me. 44,000, I think, total. Can
To
anybody
do-
correct me on that?
To do, what are we doing? Central office?
The entire central office and Strode Station Library.
Okay.
Strode Station is $12,237, and then you can see on the other quote, broken out into three sections, 9,768, 15,335, and then 6,800.
Yeah, the total was 44,204.57.
I thought I put that in the transmittal, if I didn't, I apologize.
I'm gonna make the motion to do the whole thing.
All right, any other, motion by Mr. Wilson, any other discussion? If not, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wilson, second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, next up is item number 10, consider approval of the submission of letter of intent to KDE to enter into a guaranteed energy savings contract for KRS 45A and 702 KAR 4 subsection 160 through the Kentucky Purchasing Cooperative.
Okay, good evening. We placed this on the agenda more so to get the board's direction as to how you would like to proceed, if at all, with addressing our HVAC systems and energy-saving projects that we kind of presented at the work session about a month and a half ago. We chose to address it in this manner to give the board some idea of how we could proceed either through an energy savings contract through KEDC and the state, or whether we should look at something on our own if this interests you in pursuing this avenue of replacement and repair of HVAC systems and lighting. The process, as is required by KDE, if you are considering or would like for us to pursue considering an energy savings contract, would require your approval initially of a letter of intent to KDE to give them some idea that you are considering this, which would then kick in a process of hard pricing for a particular project or projects. I'll note that this would not obligate you in any regard to whether you would actually engage in an energy contract. It's just telling KDE that you have an intent to engage in such a contract, which would start pricing. We could work then with KDE, KEDC to start working with already approved vendors to start getting hard pricing of any projects that you might be particularly interested in. So really what we're asking is the board's direction on how you would like to proceed, how you would like for us to proceed, if at all, on addressing some of your HVAC issues in your buildings and some of your potential lighting retrofits, controls, and things of that nature. Now, as I included in your packet, was some general scenarios, options for your consideration. Certainly, there are more options if you'd like to consider different scenarios, but the packet I included was also the packet that I included during our work session, which gives you a section up front at the very beginning of the document of projects that would be generic to any of the options following on that particular document. There's 4 options, each costing potentially different overall cost and different capital requests that would have to come from your general fund to match the overall project if you chose to go with an energy savings contract with KEDC.
We're just looking for something that says we're interested, and then the details will come some kind of later.
Exactly. So we're not committing to anything other than committing to KD that we're interested in pursuing this. We want to get pricing before we determine what we want to do. But you would probably, to help maintenance the most, you would need to pick out how deep do you want to go into this. I mean, are you looking at geothermal? You want to?
But we don't have to put that in a motion. I mean, motion, we're just saying that we want basically that we, a submission letter to KDE to enter into.
That's correct,
I mean,
but that will initiate a hard pricing process.
We just need to know what the hard price.
And
You've got 5 options there.
The vendors would begin pricing specifics. And that's what Paul's alluding to. If you had one of the 4 options, for example, that you were more interested in, they would price that particular option. It's very expensive to engage in analysis and pricing of such programs. So, the vendors are kind of upfront saying, we'll do this on our dime, but it's difficult for them to do that comprehensively across multiple programs because it gets very expensive for companies to send folks out to our buildings to assess in rather detail all the lighting, water, electrical, HVAC systems that exist in our system. So, it would be really beneficial if we had some general idea of an option or two.
Too much to ask for a comparison of geothermal and without the geothermal either way. I mean,
that would be option 3 and 4. Is that?
I'm just saying to get the pricing parts of it. I mean, just.
No, I think it
ask them
wouldn't.
in that direction right there.
That would be options 3 and 4, the ones with geothermal, one without. So
Cool.
If we make the motion, just get comparing prices, do the letter with options 3 and 4 in mind.
you don't have to put the options in your motion. We just needed some
You
direction.
just
on
need
what
that
to-
for what you're, I don't know what everybody else is saying, I don't know, I mean, this is your little bit.
So how many vendors typically come to do, how many vendors will participate in coming up with
Well, that.
things for us to compare
Really-
between vendors?
Really, that could be our choice, and I'll explain that. All of the companies working under KEDC's contract have already been approved as approved vendors by the
There's three
state.
there. There's at least three that's already approved,
So-
so it could be any one of those three.
Just one of them, not all three?
All
We
three
could
of
choose.
them price, But
We-
you could pick, but we can get prices from.
We can, if we want 3, we can say 3. If we want 1, we can do 1. I mean, there's nothing that would commit you to choosing more than 1 because all have already been approved vendors. So that really would be our choice to choose how many different companies we want to quote these systems.
Okay, so the vendors are not under any particular obligation that they all have to work under the same KEDC contract in terms of their costs, they're not committed to, if it's geothermal, whether this vendor gives me the bid, or this vendor gives me the bid, or this vendor gives me the bid. Are they all going to?
They've already predetermined what their costs will be for any
Okay.
district that would look at specific systems. We're going to charge you this rate for these systems, and they're locked into those rates.
Okay.
So you would likely, very likely get differing prices based on what rates they're locked in based on their bidding package that was approved by the state. But some companies might do one system over another or not do a specific system. There are specialty areas. Geothermal, I really couldn't say whether all 3 of those companies would be interested in pricing a geothermal field, but they may. I'd have to search into that. But, we'd follow your directive. If you wanted to try to get 3 different companies pricing this, certainly I'd put that out there. But we would be contingent upon the company wanting to do that, of course.
These that have the Simco units, on our capital projects, the capital requests that we just approved, there were a lot of Simco units that were already being replaced. At
Repaired.
Repaired or whatever in a relatively new building.
Yes.
Is that a concern if we go with Simco?
Well, we've had 2 compressors go out, and the company has replaced both compressors, minus labor. The warranty on that equipment is parts, no labor. So some of the costs that you see was related to us having to pay the labor to install a warranted compressor. Those are very expensive. We've had 2 go out. We've also had a motherboard, so to speak, go out on one of the units. That was very expensive. That was only warranted for 1 year. Unfortunately, systems like that are warranted for 1 year in public school systems, which blows me away, but nonetheless, that's the fact. They warranty it for a year, and then you're on your own. We've had those units more than a year, and when those boards went out, that was on us, and we had to replace that. We had 1 board at GRC go out.
So that's not really a concern then?
Sure, it's a concern, but
What,
But not any more for a Simco than it is for
than it
any
is for
others.
anything else?
It's mechanical.
when we voice that concern to the company, they look at things very globally. They'll look at, well, based on how many we've installed over the state or the country, certain percentages is acceptable that go down. It's very similar with our Climate Master pumps at Strode Station and Justice. We've had a number of those pumps go out. They're fairly new. The company's position is, well, if you can stay with under 2%, that's fairly normal over the course of 4 years. Very concerning, very frustrating, but it is what it is. They only warranty that equipment for a year in our public schools.
To see if you might have seen a compressor on that, because we did purchase one, because of the lead time to get them back on warranty is quite extensive, quite a long period. So we did purchase one as a backup.
Okay.
So you might have seen.
So that was probably one of the,
Yeah. We purchased it, installed it, and then when the warranted one came in, we saved that for a backup.
okay.
So if another one goes out, we've already got that covered. And with those systems and the equipment to those systems, time is of the essence when they go out, because we're talking heating and cooling in the heat of summer or the cold of winter. But generally, those Simco units have performed pretty well for us across the district. We have 6 on top of GRC, 4 on Campbell. And this proposal, on each of the 4 options, is also considering 2 air handlers on Baker, 2 air handlers on Strode, 2 air handlers on Shear. So that'd be an addition of 6 more as part of any of the 4 packages down there that you may consider. And that's really addressing, particularly at Baker and Strode, your humidity issues, which have been ongoing problems at those 2
Where is
schools.
Shearer? Everything I'm seeing on these options is just Strode and Baker.
If you go to the top, the beginning of the document.
Oh, yes, okay,
Right.
but when we get down to the project options,
Right.
Shearer is not included.
But they're in the upper section, which would be, the case would be provided for any of the 4 options that you might lead us to investigate.
Oh, okay, okay.
Just to look at that in the work. Any
Right.
of those 4 that you go
Okay.
to would also have shear going to solar,
Right.
which in peak times could cut your energy costs down.
By any of the 4 options that you would consider solar would be considered at Shear,
Because they already have the geothermal.
given the fact that KU will work with us on that.
Well, I think we definitely need to do the letter, and then I'm wondering if Mr. Christie and Mr. Tundle want to recommend any options we want to look at. This is almost like Greek to me. I'm figuring that's going to be the best for our school system. I don't want to.
Well, I can answer any questions that you may have regarding to advantages or disadvantages of each of those options.
Well, I think we kind of already did that, but, you told us in the working session that our need right now is the boilers going out at either Strode Station or Baker or And then there's a little bit of an issue this year too, correct?
Right.
So I agree with Gordy. I think we need to go ahead and pursue and move on.
Well, option number one, if I could just review these to possibly give a little more direction. Option number one is basically replacing everything up at the beginning of the document, in addition to replacing your boilers and chillers at Baker and Strode, just replacing the ones that are there. And that document will show you the estimated energy savings over the course of a year if you did that. The next option would be replacing boilers, chillers, and univents in every one of the classrooms that are about 25 years old. That gets you up a little bit more expensive, but it replaces additional equipment. Your third option would be your geothermal field with about 200 wells. It would combine both Baker and Strode into one heating cooling unit. About 200 wells, sharing a cooling tower, sharing the wells, new boilers and chillers to provide the heating and cooling for those buildings. And your final option is your chill beam option with no geothermal, which basically eliminates your univents in each classroom, all your filtering, your condensing pumps, your condensers, your coils. So there's a lot of things that are eliminated by going with the chill beam proposal. That last proposal is very commensurate to what you've done at Campbell in those two wings. You have chill beam without geothermal at that school.
So how are the chill beams working in the schools where we have them?
For the most part, they're working fantastic, but we've ran into an issue or two. Most recently, we've ran into an issue with a connection that goes into one of the pump modules in the newly renovated R wing. But we're working with the designers, and they've been out today designing a retrofit for those fittings to get together. But we've had some leaks, but there's a redesign in process, and the company's covering all the costs associated with that.
That's basically a plumbing issue, not a chill beam. I think it's a plumbing issue. It's a fitting between two plumbing lines.
That's correct.
It's not, doesn't have anything to do with beams in the room. It's plumbing getting to it. It's a bad plumbing fixture. So they're working on replacing all of those in that wing for us.
You know, the huge advantage to chill beam is, in my opinion, is the quietness. You can't even hear the system running while you're educating kids in a classroom. It's just almost inaudible. And you eliminate a lot of maintenance related to maintaining HVAC systems in schools. For example, every unit on the outside wall in the classroom at all of these three schools has motors, filters that have to be changed on a regular basis. With chill beam, you eliminate all of that. You don't have to buy filters, change filters. The maintenance of maintaining that on an annual basis is significantly less than maintaining water source heat pumps in every classroom, like at Shear, or water heat pumps at Baker and Strode.
Could I ask, just recommend you do the letter and then let us work with these companies and we'll do what's most economically feasible. When you're talking chill beam and geothermal, that's what you got at your high school. It's the most energy efficient high school building in the state of Kentucky. That says what it does right there. When you're looking at chill beam at Campbell, it's it's very energy efficient. It's not geothermal. Let us price the geothermal with and without, and kind of come back to you with some costs that way. Pick the best of what, working with the engineers, what they think would work best with our situation, and would be create the most energy savings for us. That's the whole idea of this. It saves on maintenance and everything, but it saves on energy. That's money that's back in your general fund every month.
Any more discussion?
More discussion? Go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the submission letter of intent to KDE to enter into a guaranteed energy savings contract for KRS 45A and 702 KR for 160 through KPC. Is that what we're looking at?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Parado, second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to vote no, so the motion passes 4-1 with Mr. Parado, Mr. Wilson, Ms. Hicks, Ms. Ritchie in favor, Dr. Kudak opposed.
Okay, the next step will be us bringing back to you that hard pricing and getting your direction as to how you'd like to proceed from there.
All right, next up is item number 11, change orders to return for the RDC renovation project.
These are change orders that would return money back into the construction fund at the Campbell renovation project. These changes were noted on your BG4s that you approved last month. So the total of these change orders would go right back into your contingency. That'll be returned to your board contingency fund following the BG5 on this project.
And the total there is $5,231.52.
That's correct. And I think last I told you, your contingency in that project was in the low 20s, so that would be in addition to that project that would return to your board funds following the BG5.
Money is coming back to us.
Capital.
That's correct.
What else is out there for that? Is that just going to alter the final, I can't remember, are we up to BG5s or 6s?
Last month you approved the BG4s.
Right, okay. So there's still a 5.
There's still a 5, and then we ask for our money back.
Okay.
Then you can choose what you'd like to do with that 25,000 or so.
That money returns to capital bill.
So it's restricted. All right, any other questions for Mr. Stump? If not, a motion is in order to consider approval of the change orders to return for the Robert D. Campbell renovation project for the credit amount of $5,231.52, and this considers all the change orders together.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Wilson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carrot. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item number 12, consider approval of schematic design for the GRC High School competition, gymnasium edition, pending KDE approval.
Okay, we're finally at the stage of schematic design. I asked Mike to put that up on the board there in the event that the board has any questions. This is the design, the proposed design for your new gymnasium. Let's let that pop up, and I'll just note a few things. I know it's pretty small up there, but you did have a picture of this in your transmittal.
The new one is better. It has the north arrow.
That has the north arrow on there.
I didn't need that, Judy.
I did. I could not tell
building's
anything
oriented.
about it. No north arrow. I am not oriented.
Just a few things I'll note, and be happy to address any questions you may have on the design. And also, Ross Tron is here to answer any questions if it gets over my head, which might be fairly quickly. But a few of the things they've worked on and kind of adjusted during programming was what I think is being referred to as the eruption zones. If you'll notice, under each of the goals, there's areas in which it's designed for students to stand, very much what you would see in a college arena. So that design adjustment has eliminated a number of seats that was originally scoped for the project. The last I had heard from Roland was that we're now down to a little over 4,000 seats with that adjustment as opposed to 4,500. Also, there was some addition of an entrance area or vestibule coming off the auxiliary gymnasium that was added so that folks can enter and exit the new gymnasium without climbing stairs and going a difficult way back to that auxiliary gym where additional locker rooms and areas for changing are that would be more accessible to the new gymnasium. I know there's still some talk about the aisling that's going down mid-court and the reluctance to design it in that capacity because you're losing a number of seats down that aisle that is your prime seats at mid-court. I know there's some discussion going on with regard to that.
The other thing I would want them to look at to make sure there's plenty of room when you put your score tables down through there, make sure there's plenty of room for people to move behind. Because that's definitely an issue, because people are going to be going behind the benches and behind the score tables.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that we need plenty of room there. The other thing is, kind of tell me where your locker rooms are there, because I really can't see that, to be honest with you.
The
I'm kind
four
of looking at
light
the
blue
block.
areas are locker rooms.
The light blue or the dark blue?
The light blue. And so on the right-hand side, there is the boys' basketball and girls' basketball locker rooms, or
Okay.
team locker rooms. Okay, and on the left-hand side, there is a visiting team locker room along with a volleyball locker room.
Okay.
So the visiting team's locker room would be available for other athletic functions, for other teams, but primarily would be obviously there for both men and women's as far as visiting, kind of where they would occur.
And it looks like you had some multi-purpose rooms. How big are those rooms? What's the square footage of them?
About 1,200 square feet piece.
Okay, because, I mean, hopefully at some point in time, I would hope that some point in time we would start wrestling here in Clark County. And I think that needs to be an area that we need to look at so they can have a facility to practice at. And I think I saw in the smoke signals, you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bowler, is there an archery team? And you're going to need some of that, an area for them to practice also. So, I mean, you know, you need to make sure when we do these rooms, that they need to be where they can be feasible and use both directions, because you're never going to have enough just square space.
Okay, one of those rooms is designated as a humanities classroom. Where is it in relation to the other arts and humanities rooms?
That's a great question, and I think Roland brought the question
I
up.
think a lot of that has to do with, we're trying to plan for dance, the dance component for the program reviews.
Oh, okay,
And an area for that.
okay,
Now, they just threw a label on that particular classroom, knowing that they had a general
Okay.
idea of how they're going to use it.
okay. And the ROTC classroom or multipurpose room in relation, the current ROTC is down that back hallway going toward the technology center, right?
Yeah, one of the things with them is they need an area, like when they do their drills and practice, they also have an area, indoor training. They have like, right now they don't have anywhere to work, I guess you want to say work out, but for their Raider events to practice.
Okay, okay. So it's not critical that it be with their other instructional areas?
No, it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other dark blue classroom is a kind of a health classroom that's more of a standard size at 750, 800. It's up to a little further up or north of where we're looking right now in that corner.
And what's the dimensions on the ROTC room, the multipurpose room? Is that the same size as the other one you just told me?
It's bigger. That's
bigger.
bigger.
The
ROTC is the same size as the Arts and Humanities class.
What's going to be the ceiling? What's going to be the ceiling height in that?
Can't get any bigger.
We're probably about a
Oh,
story and a half, so
Yeah,
we're
let's
probably
get bigger.
into,
Yeah, last night I could
think
do
around
that.
16 feet.
I could resize
So it's
it.
gonna be a taller space, it's not gonna be.
Well, that's what I'd want, because if you do something with archery, you know, maybe they could share that facility there.
Again, this is schematic. I mean, we'll be back for design development. This is kind of the overview. We want to meet with KDE and present this to them in terms of where we are with this fitting into the corner that has been planned for the competition to occur. And then with, you know, them seeing some of these additional kind of academic, kind of fine art spaces, you know, that were requested as a part of the programming.
What is the status of the BG1 for this project?
This project, the BG1 is approved for the gym alone.
We're still awaiting approval of the revision, the proposed revision, which would include your athletic fields.
Okay. So that BG1 has nothing to do with this one?
You have an approved BG1 for your gymnasium at this point, and we're looking for that revision, so.
He talked like later this week, toward the end of the week, was, you know, the conversation I had with him, that, you know, they've got everybody, they've moved, they've got everybody back, they've hired their third person, so they've got they're full staffed and everybody's back and their vacations are over, and he says they're moving forward now.
One of the hangups that he has is that there's no, all the funding is in the SFCC section. And if, wanted to know if you're talking about AstroTurf, you can't pay for AstroTurf with FSCC funds. So they're wanting to see funds in other areas if we're looking at AstroTurf fields. And that's to come on down the line. But I do know that he wants to see funds in different areas.
So what will be the funding sources if SFCC cannot be used?
It has to be a general fund.
You cannot buy turf with FSCC
You can
funds.
do everything but the actual turf. You can prepare the
So only general fund?
well.
Or capital.
It's money at the district level. If you that's to buy the turf itself.
If you choose to go with turf.
But as they go forward, they'll price the turf. If you'll get a price, you'll know what they'll be, and you make the decision whether you want turf or you want grass. And if you do grass, it's all through SFCC funding.
I'm gonna give you a little advice too. When you start looking at that turf, you better get someone that's pretty good, because you pay for what you get.
Ron and Roland, do you have any pictures of what the proposed elevation in the front would look like?
Not yet. This is like the schematic design approval that the Department of Education requests or has us go through prior to moving forward with first the board approval, hopefully this evening, and then KDE, then that would be a part of the design development.
Okay.
We have been in discussions, though, about the materials matching what's on the high school right now.
And you're not looking at a flat elevation. It looks like you got a curve here, so.
There is a curve on there, and it's matching the curvature that's on the cafeteria that you see on the front, so we're trying to.
And the auditorium, and the auditorium.
Thank you.
Because that's where it's all gonna tie in, correct, where that auditorium lobby.
Right.
Yeah.
Because nobody sees this more than me.
Exterior lighting, thanks.
I'll just be glad to have those 3 lights that are on the, on the gym there removed. All right, any other discussion? All right, motion is in order. Good job, guys, thank you. I have a motion is in order to consider approval of the schematic design for the GRC High School Approval Competition Gymnasium addition, pending KDE approval. I don't even know if we need pending KDE approval because you haven't approved BG1 for the gym, so.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Wilson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, next up is consider approval to enter into review with surveying company for GRC Park High School, GRC High School Competition Gymnasium Edition, Mr. Stumpf.
Architects are asking for us to support a survey that's required for the gymnasium project. As I've been informed, the aerial pictures of that facility and the area around that facility is not sufficient to design the intricacies of foundation, so they need more specific survey of the area that would be specific to the construction of the gymnasium. Since we don't have an approved BG.
I probably need to recuse here.
Okay,
My
go ahead.
company is not involved, but we are involved with one of the companies, so.
Okay. All right, give us a second for Mr.
Okay.
For Ms. Extra recuse.
Excuse me, thanks.
All right, you can continue.
Okay, we're asking the board to approve the expenditure of funds through capital to conduct the survey specific to the gymnasium design and construction. At some latter point, we'll come back and ask you also to approve the survey for the athletic complex once the BG1 has been approved. But we didn't feel today that it was appropriate to ask you also to fund that survey, even though it's going to be needed, until that BG1 was approved, or that revision of that BG1 was approved.
Okay.
Because that would have to come out of a different fund.
And there are 2 bids, and Ross Terrence recommending Enders Engineering.
They were actually low on the other price that we received on the athletic field, so at the appropriate time.
About 5,000,
3735 plus
5,500.
1800.
It's going to be about the same for the athletic field as well when that comes in front of you, roughly the same.
Okay, questions or discussion? If not, motion is in order to consider approval of Enders Engineering to enter an agreement with Enders Engineering for GRC High School Competition Gymnasium Edition.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Paradigm,
I'll second that motion.
second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Ms. Hicks recused. Can somebody go get, thank you, David. Next up is item number 14, consider approval to bid the purchase and installation of marquee signs for Baker Intermediate, Stroke Station Elementary, Shearer Elementary, and our Campbell Junior High Schools.
Judy run away?
She thought it was gonna take longer than that.
I guess.
I guess you figured that's going to be a long discussion.
You're gonna put the same sign with all these concepts. Just don't want to take
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we wanted to put this in front of the board and see if this is something that you were interested in pursuing. For some time now, a matter of years, we've had principals of these 4 buildings inquiring of our department as to whether or not we can support the funding of marquees in front of their buildings. So we have just chosen to seek some pricing to give the board some general idea of what these marquees may cost you if you were to consider funding these signs in front of our schools. So I've included quotes from Hammerhead Signs for both amber marquee signs and full color marquee signs in front of the 4 schools. Strode would be a little more expensive because they do not have any framing currently holding any signage at all in front of their building, whereas the other 3 schools do have framing and I guess the stick letter marquees on their sites. So out of just trying to feel the board out to see if whether or not this is something you'd be interested in funding, we wanted to put this on your table and ask for your direction. I did take the liberty to also get quotes from Daktronics, who provided our other signs, Concrete and Justice, and asked them what they would sell their signs to our school system for, and there's a couple of advantages for doing it that way, and we eliminate the taxes that are paid, and we eliminate the markups of companies that buy the product from Daktronics and incorporate that into their bids. I will say to you that the amber signs, if we purchase them directly from Daktronics, would cost roughly $17,800 compared to what you see the amber quotes for from Hammerhead for the purchase and installation of those signs, and the color was about $22,800 for your full color. Now, the $8,500 for installation also includes what you see in the pictures I've included in your packet, which is additional signage up above the sign. Would be a plastic sign that said Baker Intermediate, for example, and the stone and brickwork around each of those marquees. They're all wireless, which essentially allows their programming from inside the school or at a central office level. For example, if we went with these products, we could post anything we wanted on these signs from a central office perspective. If we had a district event or needed our parents to be made aware of something, we would have the ability to post that from our central office location as well.
So what's the cost with the Hammerhead total?
Hammerhead
for
for it was 28, I want to say 28, 29 for the complete installation. They purchased the signs from Daktronics for the amber signs, and around 32 for your full color. So there was roughly $4,000 difference between your amber and your full color.
And that's all 4 schools?
No, each school.
Okay.
That would be for each school. For all 4 schools, if we had Hammerhead.
Now, if we went with the Daktronic, what would that total be?
Well, you would reduce your cost, well, I don't know that. Well, if we bought the signs, well, we have to, if you're interested in this, we'd have to bid out the installation, because, Hammerhead is not an approved vendor through the state, so we would have to bid out the installation. The question, I think, for the board would be, would you want to bid out the turnkey project if you were interested, or would you want to build out just the installation with us purchasing the signs from Dectronics directly? And again, by purchasing them directly, you do save tax money, and you do save markups. That company mark up the equipment when they purchase it and install it. So there would be some savings if we purchase the equipment and just bid out the installation of the signs into the existing structures, but we'd have to add a structure at Strode. With the block work and brickwork that's portrayed on the signs. Also, I think if you were to support this, I would ask you also to consider the placement of the current signs at a different location for Shearer and Campbell. I think Shearer's sign is very inappropriately placed, quite frankly. It's about 100 feet into the driveway of the school. I don't think it's as visible as if it were out by the road where traffic was going by. And at Campbell, I think the sign currently existing in Campbell, as it's interfered with the gate, would be much better suited in front of the school off the road in that area. So there may be an additional cost for moving those two signs, but I think our maintenance department could lay the foundation work, move the structure, and even run the electric wiring to those sites that might significantly minimize that cost. So basically, we're just asking if this is something the board's interested in, and if so, offering us direction to proceed.
Comments? You've got two amber signs at two schools, so I would kind of think that you should be doing amber for everybody. If you wanted to do a color at RDC, because it's on the main road and a lot of people are going to see that, I think you can make that argument.
I would agree with that completely. Now, the sign size is commensurate to those at 4x8, generally 4x8 signs that you would see at
Signs
Strode.
are going to be uniform across all the schools.
What's really cool about them is that they're wireless and can be programmed from different locations in the district.
How high priority is this in the total scheme of educational expenditure and instruction?
I think certainly it hits the goal of communication with parents and community. I think that's one of the goals on the superintendent's list. Remember correctly? Communication with parents and community.
Yep. Agree 100%.
So I guess the question is, how high priority is that particular goal?
Well, it's also equity with the other schools. It's an equity.
So you're just asking for approval to bid, right? I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're not doing any numbers or anything today, and we'll come back with everything else. Okay.
Approval to bid, either for the installation only or for the complete package. I'd have to kind of get some direction as to how you wanted to bid that, if you agreed to bid that.
I'd say you do both.
I'd say you do it both ways.
Okay.
That's what I'd say.
And we can decide at that time whether or not we want it or not.
All right, any other discussion? We would want to offer a motion.
I'll make that motion.
What's it going to say?
It's going to say, make the motion to investigate or get the bids on both ways, whether we do the installation or the installation involved with the company, and then bring it back to the board and we'll decide from that point.
The board also support the relocation of those two signs that I mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Wilson,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Parado. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1 with Mr. Wilson, Mr. Parado, Ms. Ritchie, and Dr. Kudak in favor, and Ms. Hicks opposed. All right, next up is item number 15, internal board business. Consider approval for board members and superintendent to attend the KSBA, newly elected board members also to attend the KSBA Winter Symposium at the Marriott Louisville East Hotel and Conference Center in Louisville. That's going to be December 2nd and 3rd, 2016. Discussion?
I need a half hour.
Okay.
So
you don't need to be there for long, but
No,
you need to
I
be
may
there.
do mine online. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I want to see the classes for it.
You haven't gotten yours yet?
Mm-mm. Have you?
Yeah,
They've already
oh,
came.
weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been out for a while.
Yeah,
Can you send me a copy?
They're right
of this?
here.
it's on there here.
Oh, okay. We'll see.
I would mention that the registration, or the lodging, to pay for lodging, the cutoff is Thursday, November the 18th. That's the day after tomorrow. So if you're going to want
Register
to need a
soon if
room,
you're
we
gonna
need to,
stay
it's
over.
pretty quick turnaround.
I'm going to attend, but I'm not going to need a room because I'm just going to be over on Friday, so.
Any other rooms?
I'll let you know.
Well, we just need to know by the 18th.
I think I'm good, but I'll double check.
All right, that's motion, that's worded in, consider approval, so I'll need a motion.
I move that we approve for board members and board members-elect and superintendent to attend the KSBA Winter Symposium at the Marriott Louisville East Hotel and Conference Center in Louisville, December 2nd and 3rd, 2016.
Motion by Ms. Hicks.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is discussion and approval of board attorney's contract. I'd like to thank Tia for her year of service so far. There's been some ups and downs, and we have not given her any shortage of things to rule on or get legal opinions on, so I'd like to thank her for her service. So, her contract expired, original contract I think expired, what was it, November 9th, and we agreed to extend that for, what do we call it, the contract? We agreed to extend that for 1 month pending the outcome of this discussion, so. Yep, November 9th. It was extended by a month at the last meeting we had, so she's tenured through December 9th, 2016.
Nobody talk at once.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to open this position and accept the applications for the following year.
Okay.
Second.
So the motion is to open the, so motion by Mr. Parado, second by Ms. Hicks. All those in favor say aye.
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 All vote no, so motion passes to open applications for the attorney's position. Motion, voting in favor of that motion were Ms. Hicks, Ms. Ritchie, Mr. Parado, and Mr. Wilson. Voting against was Dr. Kudak. Yeah, like I said, I'd like to thank you for your service over the past year. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Consider all the following items are on the consent agenda. Does any board member wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, a motion is in order to approve or acknowledge the following. Item number 17, consider approval of GRC Clark girls basketball trip to participate in Christmas tournament in Nelson County, December 20th through 22nd, 2016. Item number 18, consider approval of GRC girls basketball trip to participate in Christmas tournament in Hebron, Kentucky, December 28th through 29, 2016. Item number 19, consider approval of GRC girls basketball trip to watch college game in Indianapolis, Indiana, December 29th, 2016. Item number 20, consider approval of GRC girls basketball trip to participate in tournament in Taylor Mill, Kentucky, February 3rd and 4th, 2017. Item number 21, consider approval of GRC girls basketball trip to participate in the state tournament in Lexington, Kentucky, March 8th through 12th, 2017. Item number 22, consider approval of GRC DECA Club to participate in Kings Island Marketing Day in Mason, Ohio, May 17th, 2017. Item number 23, acknowledge school fundraiser requests. Item number 24, acknowledge SBDM minutes. Item number 25, acknowledge community eligibility program report. Item number 26, approval of employee leaves of absence. Item number 27, acknowledge and notice of personnel action report. Item number 28, acknowledge a monthly energy report. Item number 29, acknowledge a cast position report. Item number 30, acknowledge Clark County Clerk's motor vehicle tax report. Item number 31, acknowledge Clark County Sheriff's report. Item number 32, acknowledge a monthly financial report. Item number 33, acknowledge the general fund budget summary report. And item number 34, acknowledge the balance sheet report. Motion is in order to approve or acknowledge all of those items.
I move that we approve or acknowledge items 17 through 34 as stated.
Don't make me repeat it. Motion by Ms. Hicks.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Motion is in order to authorize payment of salaries and accounts payable.
I move that we pay our salaries and accounts payable.
Motion by Ms. Hicks.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? carries 5-0. Motion is in order to return to closed session for disciplinary hearings per KRS 61.810 subsection 1 subsection F. Discussions or hearings which might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an individual employee, member, or student.
Before we do that, can we go have a?
They don't start till 8:30.
So
So I don't know how you
would
need
be
to
in
word
order
that.
to recess until 8:30 then?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
So motion by Ms. Ritchie, second by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The board is in recess until 8:30 p.m.